Hello, Howard. Welcome. We just now reached 2188. So this is the longest one you told me. So yeah, it's been a bit of a long read. But yeah, this one is written by Kaylin, I believe. Yeah, the most recent one we got to read from them is 2003, which, if we looked at here real quick. Oh yeah, it's different different futures of like the world ending, and that's going to come out in the 1st of November. Okay, I did enjoy that one. Preferred option: the giant time machine. Yes, so now we have long ass title: Life and Times of Joaquín Pablo Izquierdo de San Felipe. Reminds me of the employee from Second Cody. All right. Apparently, this one will take us the longest time to read. That's fine. How about we get started? Euclid. Special contained procedures. Anomalous activity related to SB 2188 has ceased as of 29th July 1998. In accordance with safety procedures, SB 2188 maintains an active Euclid classification until the cautionary minimal observation period expires in 2023. That's okay, that was last year, it expired. In the unlikely event of a resumption of SB 2188 activity, personnel are instructed to notify the director of Site 41, as well as the Sector G Trans Reality Artwork Research Collective, or STARC, immediately. While local assets have not been deemed necessary for containment of SB 2188 at this time, Agent Roberto Esquivel, I know it's supposed to be like Spanish, but I don't know how to actually pronounce that in Spanish. So I'm just going to call it Esquivel is currently stationed in Dodson, Nebraska, United States, as part of a special post-retirement assignment, and is available on an as needed basis. Agent Esquivel, far right, and Mr. Izquierdo, second from right, as an artist gathering Montevideo, Uruguay, 1972. Description: SCP-2188 was an anomalous relationship between an individual in Uruguay and a resident of a town in the United States. This relationship comprised the following: Joaquín Pablo Izquierdo de San Felipe, a semi-transient person residing primarily in Montevideo, Uruguay. During his lifetime, Mr. Izquierdo is believed to have been born in 1943 in an unnamed village in the department of 33, Uruguay. No reliable documentation exists of Mr. Izquierdo prior to 1961, when Uruguayan authorities issued him a work permit. I have to sit differently, it's getting uncomfortable now. Just a little bit. There we go. Mr. Izquierdo came to the attention of Foundation assets based in the Buenos Aires regional office in 1965, when he was arrested by Uruguay's interior police for attempting to smuggle live specimens of the Paraguayan hairy dwarf porcupine into Argentina. This coincided with a file report of an individual in the United States region of Nebraska conducting what was termed a performance art demonstration of an extended tango dance routine, while his partner pierced him 33 times with porcupine quill. Well, damn. Several attempts at containment were made once researchers understood the causal effect Mr. Izquierdo's actions had on residents of the town of Dodson, Nebraska, United States. Observation and several experiments determined that allowing Mr. Izquierdo to live a relatively normal life while being protected from severe harm, sometimes logically expected from his actions, was the most likely course of action to minimize potentially harmful actions among residents of Dodson and prevent widespread public knowledge of SCP-2188. Agent Roberto Esquivel was accordingly assigned as the clandestine overseer for Mr. Izquierdo in 1967. For the next several decades, Mr. Izquierdo lived itinerantly throughout the various barrios of Montevideo, becoming known to local residents as a benevolent vagrant as well as a noted eccentric, most likely to be involved with the city's more impoverished residents, often children and street artists. Between the efforts of Agent Esquivel and Izquierdo, support in the community containment was preserved until Mr. Izquierdo's death in 1998, with minimal negative impact to the town of Dodson. The town of Dodson, Nebraska, United States, a rural farming community of 5,137 residents. Footnote: as of November 2012, from no later than 1965 to 1998, a significant event occurred in the life of Joaquín Pablo Izquierdo de San Felipe would affect the mental state of the town's resident. This relationship appeared to have ceased with the death of Mr. Izquierdo in 1998. The effects of Mr. Izquierdo's action on residents of Dodson primarily took the form of impulses towards artistic or creative endeavors, though in some cases the extreme nature of several artwork could be classed as a form of temporary mental illness. Refer to the Department of Science document 2188-38.b, Resolution of Divergent Findings from Site 41 and Sector G Transreality Artwork Research Collective. As a sum result of Mr. Izquierdo's enormous influence, the town of Dodson was host to a sophisticated artistic subculture, one that in the finding of STARC greatly exceeds baseline levels of creative development found in comparable population centers and cultural regions. The scene in Sun, Strange Lights in the Prairie, Foundation Sector G Transreality Artwork Research Collective, 1997, page 54 to 55. This subculture has become inculcated in the social convention of the town and continues to develop subsequent to the death of Mr. Izquierdo, albeit in a manner consistent with anthropological norms documented in mainstream science. SCP-2188 appears to have affected between 15 to 25% of the population of Dodson. Preliminary reports indicate a much higher affected population. However, STARC studies in the 1970s determined that residents' higher than expected receptiveness to artistic works, including those of radical nature, was a natural result of exposure to the elevated level of creative activity in the town. Despite the noteworthiness achieved by Dodson in local and national media due to Mr. Izquierdo's enormous influence, the discovery of the true nature of SCP-2188 was deemed to be a minimal security risk. As such, no containment procedures were deemed necessary in Dodson. In accordance with Directive 2188-03.17, Mr. Izquierdo is interred in Misty Vale Cemetery, located 2 kilometers outside of Dodson town limit. Addendum 1. Reports from Agent Roberto Esquivel. Researchers know between 1967 and 1998, Agent Roberto Esquivel served in Montevideo, Uruguay as the primary source of containment for SCP-2188. Agent Esquivel filled a series of reports during that time. A representative sample of these reports are reproduced here for the purpose of this file. Refer to Appendix A for the unabridged records of Agent Esquivel reports. This notice, personnel preference referenced and logged. Translating primary documentation from Spanish to English. Field Report 1. Introduction. Date 17th April 1967. Summary. Agent Esquivel, per the terms of containment set by the research director, established a relationship with Joaquín Pablo Izquierdo de San Felipe. This is intended to facilitate future contacts, build trust with the subject, and enable efforts to protect the subject from undue harm. Therefore, a true relative normalcy for the residents of Dodson. Result successful action, and here we have some access additional documentation. Agent comments, after poring over the dossier for weeks, I finally met Mr. Izquierdo face to face at Chito, a scummy little bar in Malvin Norte where the students like to hang out and the bums drink whenever they can scrounge up a few pesos. I resolved to gain Mr. Izquierdo's favor in the traditional way. A beer for my friend here, I called to the barman as I sat next to the subject. Mr. Izquierdo had none of it. Ah, generous accountant you are, he said to me. My suit was a poor choice in retrospect. No, I shall buy you a drink, because this isn't a beer night. He motioned to the barman. It was a large mate with 2 straws. To my surprise, in a place like this, they were silver. The subject handed me a straw. 2 introductions, my new friend. We both sipped the brewed sleeves, and I felt the caffeine rush wonderfully to my head. I admit I love mate. I didn't question the odd choice for evening drinks. You look like a thinker. I like thinkers. They rolled out the side of my rowboat, he said as we drank together. Now's a good time for thinking. We made small talk for the rest of the evening. I had expected to work harder at it given the dossier, but we had much in common, he and I. The mate fathers a distaste for borgs and a great taste for panchos, Uruguayan hot dogs. It was enjoyable. You've fallen for him. You've fallen for his anomalous trap. We resolved to meet again for mate the next week. Containment is off to a good start. Yeah, the guys I haven't contained. Well, where is he? He might have breached. You never had him to begin with, did you? He might have breached. You just talked to him, didn't you? S-Talk listing of related artworks. FR 2188.1. Title: Tea with Strangers. Artist: Really John Lincoln. Medium: Blue Songs. Description: performed for the first time at Raphael's Tavern by Mr. Lincoln, playing unaccompanied on acoustic guitar. Sunrise Apollo, John Gruber, mural oil paint, 6-meter tall depiction of the Greek deity Apollo, playing the lyre with a sunrise in the background, painted on the side of a barn belonging to Mr. Gruber's employer. Maybe not a good idea. Maybe not a good idea. Mount Ararat, Rebecca Murad short story, unpublished narrative concerning 2 archaeologists looking for evidence of Noah's Ark trapped together at a dig site by a freak blizzard. The 2 men, Robert and Paul, initially aware of each other, learn to pool their resources in order to survive. The men share tea, which both have brought in abundance, a crucial plot point in the closing paragraphs of the story. Tell us, what is the crucial plot point? You can't just tease us like that and then not tell us. File report 4, Lalo's Elegy. Date 23rd August 1967. Mr. Izquierdo requests Agent Esquivel assistance on an errand in the barrio of La Figurita. Result: minor injuries to Agent Esquivel, 2 civilians subdued with non-lethal weaponry. Access additional documentation. That is a lot longer. Sorry about that. At 11 o'clock, I saw Mr. Izquierdo appear at the bench. I have noticed that for a person of the streets, he is strangely punctual. The subject had requested my aid to help organize a gathering of the local poets in La Figurita. I remarked to him at our last meeting that the poets of La Figurita weren't very good and that most of their writing centered around being taken to the hospital after drinking too much. He laughed at that, but was undeterred in his mission. He explained that all I needed to do was accompany him for a few hours. I need a man with violence in him, he explained as he looked me over. He's not wrong, but I was dismayed at his reading of me. We walked to a shabby part of the neighborhood with no streetlights. This was well because the brightly colored paint on the splintered facades of the row house were illuminated, enough. At a lime green doorway, we stopped. Mr. Izquierdo knocked, a strange rat-tat-tat-tat knock, and must have been code of some sort. The door parted a crack and a face with a rope map of lines, but not a single grey hair appeared from the darkness. What did we want? He asked. Mr. Izquierdo answered immediately. We need to use this house tonight. Poetry recital. Impossible, the man said. This is a place of commerce. Get a load of this guy, Mr. Izquierdo said to me as he laughed. A real businessman. How does 15 guys at a 10 peso cover sound for your business? The face disappeared momentarily. Some hushed conversation in the darkness took place before it reappeared in the doorway. We agreed to your terms. The door opened. We stepped inside of a predictable hovel. The floor littered with balls and needles. A few junkies were passing out along the walls of the front room. The first poet arrived soon after. The night must be described as a success, for there was at least 20 people crammed in there, and all was accounted for. Mr. Izquierdo called for silence and beckoned the first reader to step to the middle of the room. He proceeded to read some odious doggerel, and with the unconscious bum lying next to me. Why do you get to be basically almost passing out? Passing on and on it dragged. I had heard of time anomalies in my work, and I wondered at my fate here. Then Mr. Izquierdo pointed to the man who had been at the door when we arrived. Lalo, it's your turn. Our doorkeeper stepped in the middle of the crowd hesitantly, which struck me as funny since he was the most fearsome-looking man in the room. He pulled a piece of folded paper out of his filthy denim jacket, and I readied myself for the resumption of the dreary onslaught. What sticks in my mind most was his soft voice as he began his reading. He was the face that belonged in a prison yard, but I had to struggle to hear him as he read his piece. His story unfolded in short, clipped sentences as the room grew even more quiet. He had been to America, from the nothingness of his native farmlands to the nothingness of foreign farmlands. The work was backbreaking as ever, the poverty covering everything like a layer of old dust, just like back home. But now there was loneliness, like he could have never imagined. In time he met a friend, though, a Chilean, he said with a smirk that shocked me when it came. With someone to talk to, the work was not so bad, and at least he could drink and laugh and fight with someone when it was done. Then the Chilean was caught in a grain silo, drowning the plentiful bounty of an American cornfield. I don't know what I expected next, but it was not for this, Lalo to begin howling like a wolf, which he did. It should have been ridiculous, but the fury and the pain in his man's voice, the mourning for his friend buried in a foreign land, demanded acceptance. When Lalo finished, the entire room was completely silent. Then the police came. How did the police know about this place? Our experience with law enforcement being what they are, and the safety of Mr. Izquierdo being my charge, I elected to begin swinging the small club concealment in my coat before asking questions as the cops raided the place. As these affairs, the police always find the man being whoever happened to be around in a den of narcotics. I found my way out as the poets scattered. Mr. Izquierdo by my side. Someone landed a decent punch to my ribs, and I came out with a cut to my forehead. The identities of my attackers forever lost to the churning scene of drugs, poetry, and loss we had left behind. In the safety of the nearby alley, Mr. Izquierdo was doubled over with laughter, wiping tears from his eyes at the apparent hilarity of the scene that he had caused. Violence is an accountant and all in a drug pusher, he wheezed. The poverty of La Figurita shall improve after tonight, I tell you. You sold out your friends, motherfucker! Don't win them, my friends. S-Tog listing. Related artworks. You know what? I think I need to crack my back. Hold on. It just doesn't work well with this shit. Title, artist, medium. Bust of Poppy, Calvin Medina, sculpture, marble, a bust sculpture depicting Mr. Medina, deceased father, an itinerant farm laborer from Mexico. Mr. Medina suffered severe head injuries in a tractor accident on the same date that Field Report 4 was filed. Mr. Medina recovered as normal but proceeded to develop an intense interest in sculptures, culminating in this piece. Almost there, man. You say that, but we haven't read the tale yet from this one. Guided the Interworld Caroline Walsh dance. Performed at the Dodson Masonic Hall for an audience of 60. Described by Mrs. Walsh as a physical representation of virtual guiding Dante through hell. Ms. Walsh asked audience members to ingest a small dose of LSD prior to the performance, which most did. Ms. Walsh then encouraged the audience to attack her at the end of the performance. While no serious acts of violence were committed, enough of a disturbance was raised that authorities were notified. Ms. Walsh was subsequently arrested by the Dodson Police Department after the performance. However, no formal charges were filed. In memory of Grandmother Moon, Best Five Wolves, Comanche Medicine Ritual Performance Art. With the assistance of two others, Miss Five Wolves performed rites based upon traditional Comanche funerary practices to make the passing of the room in the middle of South Grange Avenue, disrupting afternoon traffic. Consisting of a series of dances, chants, ceremonial tobacco use, and other activities, the ritual lasted 2 hours, during which motorists left their vehicles to participate in various portions of the performance. Field Report 5, The Virgin's Bonfire. There's so many, Jesus, so many. Date, 14th November 1976. Summary, Agent Esquivel accompanies Mr. Izquierdo on a pilgrimage to the Cathedral of Florida as part of the traditional Uruguayan Veneration of the Virgin of the 33. Result, international incident between the United States of America and Uruguay. Foundation Department of External Affairs later negotiates resolution between the two nations with no lasting repercussions. More additional stuff. Is Pablo a malicious man? I still cannot tell, though he gets into enough trouble as to be classified as a saint someday. I drove into Conciliación, where Pablo had found his most recent rooftop dwelling, and found him waiting in front of the library. He jumped into the old dented upside-issue pickup truck, carrying a heroically sized jug of medio y medio, and we sped away. And if in the course of leaving Montevideo we banked into a few road signs as we wrestled with the jug of wine, what the hell, a few more dents. Pablo drank more than his half of the medio y medio, of course, and told me all about the CIA contacts he had talked up before this pilgrimage. It's my business, of course, to know who is CIA, who is KGB, who is whatever in Montevideo. So I knew Pablo was full of shit, but in the spirit of the Blessed Virgin, I let him have his fun. By the spirit of the Blessed Virgin. We stopped at what felt like every village along the way out of the country. But Pablo jumped out and reinforced our wine supplies while urging everyone to come along on the pilgrimage. He must have been spending quite some time doing this before we left even, because the road became more and more crowded the closer we came to the cathedral. I knew that Pablo had arranged some sort of exhibition in Florida, and I still do not know how he managed to convince the diocese to let that go on. Perhaps that is an SCP in itself. When we arrived, the plaza in front of the cathedral was choked with people. They had arrived in the tens of thousands, more than anyone could remember. The vendors who sell food and drink at the pilgrimage every year were ecstatic at first at the multitudes. Then Pablo emerged from our truck with a bullhorn. Where the hell did he get a bullhorn? And started blaring at the crowd as we drove on. Do not purchase anything from these thieves. Maintain your holy fast, and manna shall rain down from the heavens this night, he yelled over and over. Though I had never expected a crowd of angry food sellers to be on the ones to end Pablo, the situation was looking increasingly likely. I knew better by now than to be surprised. What the hell are you doing? I asked him, though I was asking myself. Driving this truck along with a loudspeakered maniac who was going to get us thrown to death with hardened bread rolls. Instead of answering, he instead directed me to a large clearing behind the cathedral. We parked nearby and we were greeted with more reinforcement of wine by a group of sculptors I had met previously with Pablo when we were walking through Banados de Carrasco one night. As we drank and talked, uninterrupted, we had apparently lost the angry food sellers. They presented to us their handiwork. 3 large, vaguely human-looking sculptures they called the Father, the Son, and the Holy Smoke. Each is at least 10 meters tall and made entirely of dry wood and straw. Fire, of course, would be involved. That night, the time came to light each sculpture and start the towering bonfires. Pablo had invited everyone present to come and watch. I identified very much with these people who had come. I was curious to see the spectacle and very hungry. Woe betide these sculptures if the show was unimpressive. Thousands of empty stomachs were like to be harsh critics. Pablo climbed up on top of the Foundation issued truck, and with his now ever-present bullhorn, regaled the crowd with a somewhat different version of the legend of the Virgin of the 33 that I have ever heard. I remember a few explosions. Then commanded the sculptors to light the creations ablaze. The 3 figures immediately caught, and a trinity of spectacular columns of fire lit the backside of the cathedral and the surrounding clearing. It could have been more than 15 minutes of this display before we all heard the helicopters. There have to be at least 10 of them passing over the brightly lit clearing and the thousands of onlookers. Parcels began raining down on little parachutes, hundreds of them, all over the place. Yeah, you got enough kills in Call of Duty, now you get some extra stuff. It wasn't long before the crowds tore into them, and Papa promised feast from the heavens materialized courtesy of the United States government, who had very thoughtfully included generous amounts of alcohol of varying kinds. No one, of course, mentioned that the gathering was not the group of refugees fleeing oppression in Argentina that they thought we were, as I was to find out later, after I finally managed to roast Pablo from his slumber in the bed of my pickup truck. Say the right words to the right people and light some beacons. Say the right words to the right people and light some beacons, was all he was able to get out as he clutched his head and squinted against the morning light. I can only conclude that there must be more CIA operators in Montevideo than we thought. The S-Talk listing of related artworks, number 15. Title, 33 Verses of Suffering and Enlightenment, Zelda Hughes Poetry. A book of 33 separate poems, collecting a series of poems read every Monday evening at the Dusty Crossroads Coffee House in downtown Dodson. Themes of sacrifice in the service of a larger cause and resulting in personal anguish are prevalent. The 3 Burning of Thishquangdus, Stephen F. Braddock, novel, self-published narrative concerning Thishquangdus, a Buddhist monk widely known for immolating himself as a formal protest against the police of the South Vietnamese government. The book concerns Mr. Huang's dog being reborn after his first self-immolation and leading the same life over again, with the knowledge of his previous life. The narrative consists of Mr. Huang Duke's various self-justification of his act, which vary widely over the course of the story, but always result in the same course of action. A Manna from the Heartstone, Reverend Francis Abernathy, religious sermon, footnote. By vote of 13 to 8 of STARC members, Rev. Abernathy's sermon was deemed to be a work of art based on its connection to SCP 2188, use of abstract imagery and audience impact. A highly idiosyncratic sermon idiosyncratic sermon by the leader of the town's largest church, delivered outdoors as the burial site of an unidentified vagrant to the assembled congregation. Rev. Abernathy relates to the story of Saint Augustus of Tobacco, a heretofore unknown religious figure in Christian theology, relating to the story in the form of a present-day allegory about 10 United States Director of Central Intelligence George H.W. Bush, Rev. Is that supposed to be like Reverend or Revenant? Or I don't know. Abernathy describes a hard-hearted, powerful man constantly forced into what he considers to be necessary acts of violence and destruction, before being reborn in a secret trial by the spirit of fire, into an entirely different soul, dedicated instead to a life of generosity and services to the downtrodden. Reverend Abernathy then eulogized the vagrant at whose graveside the congregation was assembled, claiming to have also known the man's identity and deeds, but sworn to secrecy about both before he died. I need to fix this like iTunes stuff here for next time. Field Report 31, A Quiet Day at Home. Okay, you say that. Date 28 August 1987. Okay, I want to see how long is this. Oh, that's not long. That's not long. That's very. It's very doable. Okay, never mind. The SCP itself is a lot longer. 28 August 1987. Howard is 2189 long. Is that another long one? Mr. Izquierdo invites Agent Escovello to watch a football match at the home of an acquaintance. Result near breach of containment of SCP-2188. It's kind of crazy to see like this almost like friendship relationship between an agent and an anomaly. I want to know if 2189 is long or not, because we still at 2188. This is definitely a long one. Access additional documentation. God damn. Not as much as this one, but still long. We had some time to kill before the painters arrived. I had never known Pablo to posit himself as the subject of someone's work, but this was a special occasion, he told me, which had something to do with the nice house we were presently in, I am sure. I didn't really ask why the nice digs. Pablo was always house-sitting for someone or other, usually an artistic patron sort of with a crush on a beautiful boy in Pablo's orbit. The living arrangement typically ended when they ran up against the ferocity Pablo displayed in protection of his artist medium. Okay. While we waited, it so happened that the defensor was playing Rentistas that afternoon, so we donned our purple kit and watched the game on a color television almost as big as some of the monitors at Site 87. The erstwhile residents of this house had excellent taste in mate, and Pablo brewed some during the commercial breaks. Between the excitement of the match and the buzzing in my head from what had to have been 7 or 8 cups of mate, I grew impatient to know why we were surrounded by 8 blank canvases. Pablo explained the project to me. I have commissioned a series of self-portraits in an attempt to understand myself more, he said. I am consumed lately by visions of myself in vast fields of wheat, chilled to my core by prairie winds. An alien landscape, certainly, but not an entirely unpleasant one. I feel a sort of connection to this place in my mind. I must know more. I know why this was. Of course I knew why this was, but I could not tell him. It may amaze the researchers reading these dispatches, but I have not had need to be duplicitous with Pablo in the many years I have been his keeper. I dreaded him asking for my insight when all I could offer was lies. Quickly to change the subject. Why self-portraits? There exists, Roberto, a dynamic relationship between the artist and his impetus. The artist depicts the concept, and in his depiction he changes the concept. You know, Heisenberg shit. Waving his arm to demonstrate the scale of his thinking. It is in the interplay of this relationship that we learn just what something is, and so I have called 8 able artists to paint my portrait. Why am I seized with this vision of a place I have never been so late in my years? I hope that this helps me to understand. I couldn't help but blanch at this. To hold back from Pablo something of great importance to him, he must have seen my expression, and I hope to God he misread it. He leaned in, a whisper from a conspirator to his nervous partner in crime. And you know, all of this would be terribly self-important and vain, of course, if the portraits were hanging in my own house. He laughed at his joke, as was his prerogative, and then cheered wildly as Mintaka buried an equalizer, and I don't know that I've ever enjoyed a defensive goal as much as that one. The others arrived in the course of time and got to the work immediately, solemnly setting themselves to a task given to them by the great Joaquín Pablo Izquierdo de San Felipe, as the man himself distributed beer from the house fridge. Each artist feverishly labored to the vision of Pablo up on a canvas, as though the greatest honor would go to he who finished first. I never seen before or since a connected act of respect greater than that paid to Pablo by these 8 young painters. The first painter to finish, a young woman, rushed to show Pablo her handiwork. Not yet, he cried, averting his gaze. It must all happen at once. A grand unveiling of collected truth, he pronounced to the room, laughing at the grandiose statement, but I could tell also deadly serious. He tossed the brash young painter a beer, and she reclined on the couch with us as we waited for the others. One after another, the painters finished their work and began their own personal assault on the contents of the house kitchen and refrigerators. This arrangement was not unusual, as food and drinks were an established part of the artistic currency in the neighborhoods of Montevideo. As the last painter finished and disappeared into the kitchen, Pablo sprang up from the couch, assumed the position in the center of the room, and closed his eyes. Roberto, if you will do the honors of turning the portraits to face me, he said with a flourish of his hand. I went to the first portrait, the one painted by a speedy young Turk, and snuck a peek before I turned it to face Pablo. What I saw was perfect representation of Reverend Francis Abernathy, leader of the First Methodist Church in Dodson, Nebraska. His face was clear as day to me, as though I had the SCP-2188 file open in front of my eyes. My shock lasted for 3 seconds, as the various consequences and implications sped through my mind. He could not know, I reasoned. None of them could possibly know. But how? Another 2 seconds. Another 2 seconds. How was unimportant right now? I turned the first portrait around. Each successive picture was another significant person in the town of Dodson. What kind of painters were these anyhow? They looked nothing like Pablo. I faced all of the portraits and told Pablo to open his eyes. Maybe everybody sees him differently. That's the thing, right? Maybe they all see him as a person that they can be comfortable with, A person of comfort. He slowly complied, peeking coyly at first and slowly turning. Examining the portraits surrounding him, he was confused at first, but a smile played slowly across his face, and as he kept looking, he laughed, as though he was beginning to just now get the punchline of a joke told 2 weeks ago. Marveling at his own slow realization, these people, they look as though they should live in this place that has taken such hold of my mind. He said, the astonishment continuing to grow in his voice. It's absolutely brilliant. They are the logical outgrowth of this place, brought here in the most irrational way possible. What a wonderful collection of portraits. Well done, my friends. I told him it didn't fall one bit, continuing with my habit of telling the truth to Pablo whenever possible. Don't you see, he said to me, they have always been here, in the realm of the unexpressed idea, waiting for the opportunity. They are tired of waiting. So here they are, coming to us of their own accord, being themselves and being me at the same time. I am. We are. All of us are of this realm. The natural flow of something, I'm not sure what, it's returning somehow. Do you understand what I mean? I took a few moments to turn his words over my mind. The professional filter told me that this was of concern, but a containment breach? So much of this anomaly was the exchange of ideas happening in the open, but impenetrable to all but we few, happening upon it by accident. No. A sublime moment, its participants content to let it be as it is. I understand completely, I told him. No you don't. No you don't. Mister, you don't understand it at all. Listen for related artworks, number 31. After all is said and done, all I have is You and Myself and You by Molly H.R. Yerevan. It is a experimental prose, a loosely structured narrative consisting of first-person recounting of the narrator's experiences with a close companion, followed by a series of 3-verse poems from what appear to different points of view on a single unclear event affecting the lives of the narrator and their companion. The narrative is interspersed with several songs read at the arts and crafts portion of the Dodson Harvest Conclave by Miss Yerevan. The Brothers Man, George Hillsong video presentation. A pre-recorded monologue delivered by Mr. Hillsong via 3 television monitors. Mr. Hillsong, through the use of makeup and prosthetics, appears significantly different on each monitor. The monologue consists of a meditation on the nature of identity, interspersed seemingly at random with footage of a football match between Uruguayan clubs Defensor and Rentistas, presented at the Dodson Union High School monthly art festival. I Have 8 Faces, The Fading Sky, rock album, minor label release from Dodson-based rock and roll band The Fading Sky. Continues the band's development of what will come to be known as the trademark post-new wave, slow tempo synthesizer heavy sound. Consists of 8 tracks, most of which feature subtle punk rock influence. 8 tracks contains an additional song commencing 3 minutes and 30 seconds of the End of Firelight. Listed on the rare Japanese release of the album as a 9th song entitled Pablo Surrounds Himself. Field Report 48. Farewell. Date 29th July 1998. Summary: Agent Esquivel comes to the Hospital de Clínicas in the barrio of Prague Ballet in Montevideo at the request of Mr. Izquierdo, admitted to the hospital a month prior with an advanced case of pancreatic cancer. Agent Esquivel arrives at 3:15 hours local time. In the morning? Goddamn. Result: cessation of SB-2188. Access additional documentation. Oh, thank you for keeping this one short at least. Agent comments: from the street, the hospital always looked to me to have its arms outstretched, long ropes hanging down from its skeletal arms. An embrace none are large enough to escape. In the empty space of his heart was Pablo, and every time I miraculously left this place alive. I never understood how I could leave him within its grasp. I brought him some charcoal pencils and a pad of paper the last time I was there. He didn't ask for anything when he called me in the night and asked me to come. In the heart of this obscene monument, by the grey light of an institutional table lamp, I had my last conversation with Pablo. He had something to show me, he said on the phone. As I arrived, he pulled out his pad of paper. I think I know who you are, Roberto. What you are? He wheezed as he struggled to hand over the pad to me. I had always wondered just how much Pablo knew. I looked at the pad as he summoned the rest of his words. He had drawn my portrait, apparently using our prior meeting as the basis of the sketch. Pablo had always been one to draw out of the people around him. But very few times had I seen him create something himself. I looked at the picture of myself, but not myself really. Viewed through the eyes of someone else. More than the features of my face, what I recognized was my own despair. I viewed this desolation as though it belonged to someone apart from me, someone else, and this was a goddamn dagger through my heart. Pablo now had the energy to finish his sentence. What you are, Roberto, is my friend. I'm glad you're here. Out in the open, there it was. In the empty heart of cities, watchful death guards, decades of the lives of two men, laid out in a dingy room surrounded by the early morning. I can't write any more of this. Yeah, I mean, you have known this SCP for over 20 years. Of course you're gonna be sad now. You were enraptured by him. Something about him fascinated you, and now he's gone. The Remembrance Mars residence of Dodson Multimedia description. An event taking place over several days in early August 1998. When did he die? In July? Yeah. The suggestion of Roland Nygaard's Scoutmaster of Dodson local Boy Scout troop residents are spontaneously asked by members of the troop to commemorate those they have lost over the prior year. Thousands of people will respond with innumerable songs, paintings, stories, sculptures, and other artworks. Damn, it is kind of sad, isn't it? It's an SCP that basically got people to be creative. It's weird, how they got creative. It's weird that they suddenly got this creative side of them, and not only that, but also a lot of phrases he has made has come true, light a flare and suddenly the army shows up and stuff like that. Whatever they create can literally influence life and fate. And now he's gone, and now there's all these people that just want to pay tribute to him. At a town hall meeting, residents decided to deposit the collected artwork at an underutilized columbarium in the nearby Misty Vale Cemetery. Led by an ad hoc marching band made up of 18 town residents calling themselves the Town Limits Honor Guard, the entire population of Dodson forms a parade starting downtown and concluding at Misty Vale Cemetery, carrying the assorted artworks. That must have been a sight to behold. The works are placed in the columbarium, and the cemetery is host to an impromptu gathering featuring music, contests of artistic skills, and at least 148 documented eulogies for deceased family members and friends. Addendum 2, Future Containment Directives. Directive 2188-03.17, 13th October 1988. To minimize the likelihood of resumption of a known anomalous phenomenon, this office accepts the recommendation of Field Agent Roberto Escovel to inter the remains of POI-A Joaquín Pablo Izquierdo de San Felipe clandestinely at the site of previous manifestation of the anomaly in the United States as a risk reduction measure. Furthermore, Agent Escovel is hereby transferred from the Montevideo Field Office, Site 87, to the base of operation established by STOG in the vicinity of Dodson, Site 41. Agent Escovel is to begin a new assignment assisting STOG in documenting and analyzing the continuing development of the art subculture of Dodson. Finally, I personally commend Agent Escovel for his 31 years of service in successfully containing SCP-2188 and for his continuing commitment to the protection of human civilization in Dawson and elsewhere. May his forthcoming research on the legacy of POY-A continue to benefit mankind. Blank, director site 87. Let me see something. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, here's the Salt of a Misty Veil. To Escruel, Roberto, from Site 67, Secure Connection. Response, thought you like this. Attachment, Misty Veil PDF. I think this just leads me back to here, right? Yeah. Okay, announcing yourself, Roberto. Found this in the fall issue of Route 5. You're a literary type. You should pick it up, unless you saw it before it went to press. Sly old bastard. I think you're going to fit in around here. JWX. The Stars of a Misty Veil by Lila Stone. Okay, looks like somebody wrote a story for him. The moon shone sharply through the cold night air as Roberto Esquivel, 6 feet of lean muscle and too old to have anything to prove, informed me that we stood at the grave of George Herbert Walker Bush. I laughed, but he isn't dead yet. And anyway, here in the middle of Nebraska? At that point, I didn't care if he was touring with me. I found him the scent of no less a group of personages than Nathan, the farmer and secret painter, Gertie, the mechanic, and not at all secret theater critic, and Juan, poet in residence at Lucy's Diner. Noontown and already admitted to the deepest of inner circles. He ordered 3 cups of coffee at once, saying he liked it hot, warm, and cold. By the end of my shift, I was determined to find out what game he was playing. He solemnly smoked a cigarette, a South American brand I never heard of, that tasted of flowers and ash. He addressed the plain gray headstone that read only tested by fire. One day, George Bush was no longer George Bush, he said. Soon after he became head of CIA, he learned a few things, and then he stopped doing it. Someone else had to do it. He ended up here. I was going to tell him that this one didn't count. You couldn't just make up secrets. It wasn't fair. But I stopped. The things you learn to trust are the reactions that people can fake. You either learn you either learn that or you get hurt. This man, gray at his dark temples, lines around his kind of brown eyes and scars on his knuckles, could not have made up the awe that I heard in his voice as he told me this. Not if you put a gun to his head. I wasn't sure what to make of this. The only thing I could do was go next. My turn to divulge a secret about our surroundings. That space over there was a blank stone, I said to him, pointing a few rows over. This was one of the things that only I knew about Mistyvale Cemetery. A place where I could have a smoke break and read a book in solitude while the patrons of the diner waited patiently for my return. Solitude is hard to find in Dodson. I tell you guys right now, you will never find me in a cemetery. Just chilling there reading a book. Day or night, I will not be there. The stone disappeared one day without explanation. It must have been stolen, I told him, since the grave had not been disturbed. Interment was out of the question. I completed my trade for the secret fate of the 41st President of the United States. His turn again. But he stopped. I have thrown him off balance somehow. This remote traveler with a center of gravity deep beneath the earth. Surely that can't top the secret grave of a famous person. My laughter died on my lips before I had a chance to regret how girlish it sounded. That serious look crossed his face again, and I knew my secret got into him somehow. And with that, we now were well past the point of flirtation and curiosity. I shivered a little. Tell me who you think is in the grave, he said. It wasn't a command, but he knew that I had an opinion on that, and he knew I would answer. I had thought often of who lay beneath the smooth, featureless stone. I had deduced that he must have been from out of town. Nobody dies in Dodson without someone knowing the body. Strangers in Dodson tend to be artists, so he must have been somehow connected with the scene. But then an artist in Dodson will always be known to someone. So maybe he was connected in some other way. Someone was nice, so someone cared about him. Maybe Reverend Abernathy could have arranged that, but it wasn't like him to leave no message. Roberto's eyes stayed locked on me. He didn't move a muscle. My logic was sound, he said, but it was beyond logic, and I knew it. He told me that not as an accusation, but almost like a professor prodding a student. He was full of little distinctions like that, things that could be easily taken a different way if you didn't pay enough attention. That's probably why I was really out here. And anyway, he said, how did I know it was a man? I smelled. Just a hunch. What other hunches do you have? He remained serious, transfixed. Sorry. At times, as I stared at the horizon beyond a blank stone when it was here, I thought about that, but it felt like I was doing something untoward, making the dead fit my own story. When they couldn't fight back, letting daydreams and fancies cheapen the tranquility of this man in his resting place. Something in Roberto's eyes gave him permission. I think he was from somewhere far away, like you, I started. I imagined a man who lived a life that wasn't concerned with jobs and deadlines and bills, but he still understood all kinds of people. I think he would have been interested in what a waitress had to say, just like you. Whenever I came out for a smoke, I could imagine him lighting my cigarette and telling me a story or a joke. I slightly nodded. I kept going. Someone loved this man. Many people did in all kinds of ways, but this man shared something with somebody that goes further than any of that. See, that's why the stone was blank. There wasn't any words that could have gone on it. Nothing would have suited. And his monument had to be something mysterious, frustrating, inspirational. It makes me sad to think it's been stolen. In that moment, it did indeed make me sad. Why does talking about something help us to grasp it? Why had the enormity of this loss of a monument only become clear to me now? None of that mattered. Something about the two of us here, this time and this place. There's nothing so intimate as sharing a stranger's grief. There was so much about this night that I did not understand, but I knew something about who these two men were now. I wiped tears from my eyes, strangely unashamed. The proper thing would have been to not intrude on what is clearly someone else's life. Something that no one except these two men could have shared. But this was a night where things that were true held sway. Brilliant little points of experience that streaked into our vision like falling stars in the darkened sky. Decorum be damned. I moved close to Roberto. He would have found your monument to be perfect, I said to him. A blank signpost for someone who was a guide to so many. He would have found it funny. But there's another meaning to it, something deeper. The truth of it comes to me like a starlight, Roberto. Like out of the air. He smiled now. Did I find it strange to have something to take hold of me like that? He asked. I said that this had been a strange evening. I returned the smile. This would be expected in a place like Dodson, with a man such as you. He took the compliment. Gravity crept back into his smile a little. The lines in his face somehow looking deeper. We understand far less of this world than we think we do, he said to me. Reality is not a settled thing from moment to moment. He took both my hands, but that's not something that you can just tell someone. You have to bring them to it, in the right place, at the right times, and then deeper truth comes forth from them, true understanding, something I learned from my friend here. We shared a few moments together with these thoughts, the mist of our breath, and an offering to the stars that's shone in his place. We turned to leave, both knowing where we were going next without speaking. As I reached the gate, he touched my shoulder. Turn around, he said, and so I did. Behind me, the stone marking the grave of this man was back, planted firmly in the frozen earth, impossibly undisturbed. It had never been removed at all. In that moment, I should have been startled. I should have doubted my senses, suspected the stranger I was with. Instead, I thought on the thresholds I had crossed to come to this moment. I left behind the poisonous security of my career, cut my ties with my family, let phone calls and messages from my former friends go unanswered for months. All to come here, but something was missing. Having burned down the effigy that I had to pretend to be, what was I now? Something held back the answers to the question. This was a signal. I was in a truly unknown landscape now, in a realm where God knows what held sway. I thought I succeeded in the act of tearing down destroying, but now I knew I had the blank space in front of me that I had thought. Something else was staring inside me now. The way forward was shining out into the night. Roberto's hand remained on my shoulder. I like this town, he said. You have to show me around tomorrow. There we go. What a lovely ending. What a lovely ending. I almost imagined the blank rock was supposed to be, because he was always about like a canvas, you know, let your own imagination describe him. And I think that's what had happened with the stone. Why the stone came back is because because she didn't know who he was. She didn't think of anything about him. But the moment she talked to Roberto, she had a better understanding of this guy. She even like mentioned like, oh, he might have been an artist and traveled around. Maybe like came from afar, like just like Roberto did. And the more she had an image of who he was, that's when the stone came back. Maybe. It was like kind of like a reminder that he used to exist. The moment like people forget about him, that's when his actual existence fades away. One thing about death is that you pass on, but depending on what you did, you have a legacy. You basically are immortal depending on what you did. Joaquín Pablo Izquierdo de San Felipe, he has done a lot of things for people. He has let people be creative, has let people describe him or let the creative juices flow towards him for like years. There was a relationship that was like very wholesome, questionable but wholesome. And when he died, and people started to forget him, that's I feel like where the stone slowly vanished away, and that's why Roberto seemed to be like interested in like, oh, what do you think? Who do you think he was? What do you think he was? And then like that's when the stone came back, because that's when she had an image of him in his head. And not only that, talking to Roberto made her realize like, oh, they had a long relationship with each other, a long friendship with each other. That was like, and that's his friend who passed away. And nobody remembers the friend now. But now she does. Or she has an image of him, and his memory shall live on.